All right, we are live. This is episode 57 of the Deconstruction podcast brought to you by Jobtable, the simplest way to grow and manage your construction business. As always, I'm going to kick it off here with a quick review. This came in from Jerry. This is an electrical contractor out of Arizona. This is a really good review. So Jobtable's customer service blew me away. I had an issue with how line items in a job complete the job. Even though we had more line items coming, not only did they provide the standard video about how this works, but they also sent a personalized video on how my specific issue can be resolved. I've never received this level of customer service in my personal or professional life. Thank you again, Jobtable. So far, yours is the best construction service that actually understands its clients and is willing to go above and beyond client needs. Shout out to Jerry. I was really proud of that review. We always stress how our support and team is our bread and butter and our quality of service. So always very, very happy to hear reviews such as that one. So thank you to Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. Really appreciate it, man.
All right, so we have a special guest today. We have Skye Waterson on. Skye works with business owners, a lot of them in the trades, around something that I think explains a lot of what we see. Guys who are sharp, hardworking, great in chaos, but the business stays chaotic no matter how much revenue comes in. Her whole focus is executive function, focus, delegation, and simple systems that actually get used, especially when your brain doesn't want to get the boring stuff like admin, follow-ups, bookkeeping, job costing, all that stuff that matters. So if you've ever felt like you're busy all day, but you're still behind, this is probably the episode for you. So Skye, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Great to have you. If you don't mind, take a minute or two, just introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I work with CEOs, business owners who struggle with ADHD symptoms. So not ADHD diagnosis necessarily. A lot of people just struggle with the symptoms and they never got the diagnosis, but they know that the reason that they're not growing to the level they want in their business is because they are struggling with organizational issues that are kind of above and beyond what they're seeing in other people.
Okay. And do you see, is this like really prevalent in trades and construction from what you see?
Yeah, it's actually prevalent everywhere. So I'm a former academic. I was diagnosed at the beginning of my PhD with ADHD, and that's one of the reasons I ended up in this career, was looking up my own research into how this works. And when you look at people in business in general, what you find is that there is a higher percentage of people who struggle with ADHD symptoms because it's the kind of environment where an ADHD brain will thrive. So some of the strengths, so movement, action, all that kind of stuff, that can be really helpful for starting a business. But what we find is that for scaling a business, all of those issues around transitions and working memory and you know, being able to delegate effectively and communicate effectively all come back into play again and can stop people from successfully growing. And yeah, very much people in the trades. I work with a lot of people in construction, irrigation, you know, remodeling, all those kinds of things.
Okay. So what are then some characteristics that you would see in trade owners where you would classify them as having ADHD?
I think the biggest thing is when they've been to the business courses or they've even had people on who specifically help them with, you know, organizing, and it's still not working. Everything is all in their head. They're getting everything, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, my quotes need to be like this, and then I need to delegate like this, and I have to put it in this service. You know, I work with people very specifically helping them get things into their applications that they've got. But then you come back the next week, you're like, how's it going? Oh, well, I just didn't do it. And they can't explain why that's happening.
So it kind of seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, Skye, it kind of seems like they know what they have to do, but I always like to reference a messy desk with paperwork everywhere. They just don't know where to start. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, they don't know where to start and they don't know why they don't know where to start. So someone else might point out like, "Oh, well, fix this bit of your desk." And they'll be like, that doesn't feel right." And so you'll have this really frustrating conversation. For a lot of people, they'll come to me because they are like, okay, everyone else is is over it, basically. Because, you'll say, "Oh, well, what about starting here?" And they'll be like, "Ah, it doesn't fit." But when we look at the neuroscience, which is what I do, you'll see that actually the reason that it's an issue starting is because of how your dopamine, works, and how your working memory sees things, and the fact that object permanence is a problem that you're having. So there's all of these different pieces that we need to basically diagnose, not officially diagnose, but like go through a diagnostic process and then adjust so that people can look at their desk and go, "I know what to do. I know how to clean it up." And the same with their team. This just becomes worse when you have a team. You start to scale chaos. And so the chaos you feel in your own life just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that can feel very unstable for a lot of people.
Yeah, and if I can speak, sorry, Kos, if I can speak just, from the construction standpoint, because even though I am one of the founders of Jobtable on the software side, I still do own and operate in a construction company. And it's so funny because what you just described is many people that I know. And it's crazy to actually have somebody with a PhD that looks at this, the science and the neurology behind it, right? I believe I said that word correctly. And kind of, just looks at what the actual problem is. Because what you just explained, I can't tell you how many people we talk to day to day that say the same thing. We give them solutions, and it's all ands, ifs, or buts, right? But they're still in that same chaos, right? So yeah. It's very interesting to even hear it from your perspective on how you're actually looking at the data and this is what it's telling you, right? And I can, list you, I don't even think I have enough, fingers and toes just off the top of my head to tell you how many people I know like that. So it's pretty crazy just to hear it in speaking to you about it.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people resonate with, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's good to get away from the idea of you have to have a diagnosis, because a lot of people don't have the time, they don't want to do it, and even when you look at the research, a lot of the studies they do are on people who they term subclinical, so they don't even have a diagnosis themselves. I do want to say, yes, I have studied this, but I am technically a PhD dropout. I left my PhD to grow this business. So I just wanted to say that in case anybody's wondering.
Hey.
Fair enough. I want to take a step back quickly. I feel like you often hear ADHD as this term that gets kind of thrown around loosely. So what is ADHD? Like, is it like a medical condition that you treat with drugs and medicine, or is it something that you can solve through improving your lifestyle, sleep, exercise, like your environment? Like break it down. Like, what is ADHD?
Yeah, so ADHD at its core is a struggle with attention. So we're looking at how people are taking in information, processing information, and the idea of it's in the DSM, which is where you'll find other things like anxiety or depression, things like that. It's considered to be, a disorder. There is more of a conversation now about it being a disorder based on your environment. So it's a disorder in one environment, but in others it can have some benefits. In terms of how you solve, for ADHD or, primarily inattentive, primarily hyperactive, or combined, really you want to do a combination of things. So your lifestyle is really important. When you look at the research, they've got amazing meta-analysis of randomized control studies, which basically means kind of close to gold standard studies where they find that movement is so important for your, ability to regulate, your support with working memory, your emotional regulation, which can be a struggle. Also, medication is something that a lot of people do. I am personally not medicated for ADHD. I decided not to, and I had kids and things like that. But a lot of people do, and they benefit from that. And then also having executive functioning strategies so that you understand, okay, you basically get to a place where you can understand and diagnose yourself. You can say, okay, this is happening because I am transitioning between too many different things. I need to block specific days for specific tasks so I'm not constantly in my car running from one place to another. Things like that.
Got it. So if you were to fix all that, right? You fix your sleep, you move, you exercise, you diet, have good systems. Like, do you still have ADHD?
That's a good question. You could get to a place where if you did the ADHD test again, so you went to a psychiatrist and they went through the questions, if you said, no, I'm not struggling with this, no, I'm not struggling with this, no, I'm not struggling with this, then technically they wouldn't give you ADHD. If you'd had a previous diagnosis, it really depends on the situation because the diagnosis process is slightly different in different countries, but they might say that you're in remission essentially.
So is it like a subjective diagnosis? Like I can go to one psychiatrist who can give me ADHD and the other says I'm fine?
That's a good question. So according to, the diagnostic process, it does go through a set of specific criteria. That criteria is from a psychiatrist. So technically a psychiatrist could say that you don't have it and someone else could say that you do have it. But more importantly, to me anyway, is that when you look at how brains react to certain things. So if you do brain scans, which people don't really do because it's quite a lot of work and it's expensive, you can actually see that people who have ADHD, their brain reacts differently to different stimuli compared to people who don't. So you are seeing really real differences.
Now, can I ask just to further that question from Costa? And I'll relate this, to the construction industry, and I think it relates to all, no matter what you're doing as a profession. But I also feel like the transfer of information is very fast nowadays. So, for example, you're getting an email. At the same time you're getting an email, you're getting a text message, you're getting a phone call. But at the same time, you have to focus on, the task at hand, whether you are a guy on site or you're in the office. Where, let's go back 30 years ago. You used to get a fax, let's just say, right? There really wasn't any email. So would you basically link kind of how fast information travels now and how fast people want answers, to those questions or solutions to their problem, like when you're looking at the construction world. I'll explain to you, me being a plumber, I'm working on a task. I'm getting a call from somebody else because they have an issue. At the same time, I'm getting emails while I'm on that call and I'm working on a task from, 5 other people, and I'm trying to delegate it, but everybody wants their questions answered immediately. Would you blame some of that, how fast information travels today on that diagnosis? Because the reality is, look, everybody can at some point come up with systems and compartmentalize and figure out what's pressing and what's not pressing. But the reality is, and I'll speak here in North America, everything's just so fast paced, right? Like we talk about it all the time. When I go to Europe, I find that they don't have this issue as much. And I feel because of the lifestyles is a lot slower. And just like you said, I have kids as well. And I've always been worried about these diagnostics, at such a young age because the brain's still developing. But when you transfer it into the real world today, like I said, I can name you a dozen people just off the top of my head that fall into that same category that you were talking about. But I also feel like, too, the transfer of information is so fast-paced that sometimes, no matter whether you are diagnosed with it or not, it is overwhelming, right? The amount of bombardment that you get.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really complicated question. I think that really what you're talking about is that it is easier to get overwhelmed these days, 100%. Like, we live in a much more complex world. We used to send letters or, that kind of thing and wait for responses. And so you could think about things. Things can go a lot faster. That can be great for certain situations with ADHD. When you look at the research into how people who have ADHD or ADHD symptoms start businesses, we love fast movement. Like, get it done tomorrow. You can put a website up. You can vibe code. You can, make all of these things happen. That's awesome. But it can also mean that you're going to very quickly get entangled. And in terms of like the diagnosis and diagnosing too much, it's really about environment fit. So whether you do or don't diagnose, the truth is, if you struggle with ADHD symptoms, whether you do or do not diagnose yourself with ADHD, or people do or do not diagnose yourself with ADHD, you will have ADHD symptoms. You'll just called lazy or spacey or something else. So, if we take that away, what that's really about is, okay, what environment shifts, what strategies are you going to use to solve these problems that you do have? And so for some people, getting that diagnosis, getting that medication, going down that track is what they want to do. For some other people, they want to go, okay, I think this is an environmental fit. I'm going to adjust the environment. I'm going to try and maybe, it's not always possible, but, put my kids in a different school or move into a job that I think is going to be a better fit for me. And I'm going to work out and I'm going to get the strategies and understand my brain. Like, both are super valid strategies for the same problem. And it's really a personal decision which one you go with, or if you do a combination of both.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to further that as well. Like, let's get into like some actual specific strategies, tips people listening to this can maybe hopefully apply. So like Johnny was saying, right? I don't only think, and that's such a good point, like the movement of information and all this, but specifically when you're in the trades and in construction, there's also a lot of just bouncing around, wearing different hats. Like, one minute you're on the site with the crew, managing, directing traffic. The other minute you're at a lunch with a client in like a nice restaurant. The other minute you're at your desk doing admin. Then you're taking a call from a client. Like, there's a lot of transitions, ups and downs throughout the day. So like, why are these transitions difficult for a lot of people? And again, what are some actual strategies to help people manage their days better?
Yeah, so that is a great question. Managing your day is a massive one with ADHD. So there's two things we want to do when we're on the job site. And I work with a lot of people on this. Number one is, for anybody, you need to understand what are your absolute priorities for that day, and then what needs to be done. What's the important stuff? When people work with me, they have challenges that they're doing all the time, so they always know what's the most important thing in their business right now. So what's truly urgent and what is most important. Truly urgent as in, if your day went sideways and you ended up in a waiting room, what would you still get done on your phone? What would you message people and say, I can't do that tomorrow, I'm not prepped? If it doesn't count, if that's not what it is, it's not truly urgent. And for a lot of people, that's a really big struggle. So once you've identified that, you know what's truly urgent, you know what's truly important, and we have a system we teach called the prioritization filter that shows you how to do that. Then you're into, but now my day has this meeting and this lunch and this job site conversation and this chat with this, person, and I'm still doing quotes, etc., all that kind of stuff. You really want to go ahead and batch things. So one of the things we can see from the research is that with ADHD, we have what they call like a bleed effect. So you can't just switch like you might be able to do if you're more on the neurotypical side, so you don't struggle with ADHD symptoms. And what that means is that you need to build your life so that you can have days when you're doing one thing, days when you're doing another thing, as much as possible. It's not always possible, but a lot of the ways that we deal with this is around setting boundaries and around saying, okay, if I'm going to have a lunch with a client, I'm going to try and have 3 lunches with clients in the city, and it's all going to be on the same day. And then on the other days, I'm going to have like an admin day. I mean, a lot of people already have this. They'll have a specific day for admin. So on some level, they understand this, but it's pushing it even further than that to say, I'm not going to have myself running around all the time doing all these different things because of the bleed time. So not just because I can't do it, but because I'm actually going to be slower and I'm going to get less done overall.
Yeah, and it becomes detrimental. Actually, it's funny that you say that too, and that's great. And I hope the people listening are, taking note of this, because one of my philosophies in scaling my business was something I actually took from Costa. So kudos to him. And I think it's right up, something that you're saying as well, that if it's not in my schedule, I just can't do it. Right? Mm-hmm. So you have your schedule that you've set out, whether it's days in advance, weeks in advance, whatever it is. And obviously things are going to shift a little bit, but essentially getting back to that priority where it's like, if you know that 9 to 10 you're booked through, at this place, and then, 11:30 to 12:30 you're booked at that place, don't try to sneak anything else in, because all that's going to do is, like you said, the bleed time, right? Now what's going to happen is the rest of the stuff in your schedule is going to suffer. Right? So almost like not overwhelming yourself, giving yourself those time slots, and those time slots are going to depict your day. Now, again, I want to be very clear that, especially in construction, there's a lot of moving parts and things change on the fly. But at least, like to your point too, Skye, is prioritize, right? So if you know that you have those things in your schedule because they're extremely important, and something else comes up, well, at least you're going to start to know what you can say yes and no to, instead of being like what I like to call the yes man, right? Where you're just saying yes to everything, and now what's happening is, you're saying yes to everybody to please everybody, but now you're letting everybody down, and they're looking at you like, hey, you said you were going to help me out, but it's because you're overwhelmed. And I can see that a lot, like especially in construction. And I'm glad that you do this work with people in construction, because I do feel this is a common element in this field.
Yeah, that's huge. And there's this idea that you have to finish everything on your list. You have to take on everything and then you have to finish everything. And really, that's like a way to guarantee that you won't be successful. What we really need to do is not have this massive house of cards where we're just trying to add everything, and hope that it works. But we want to identify what is the biggest break point in your business right now. Like, what is that important thing? And then what is the biggest, urgent thing you have to do? And if you can hit both of those consistently, and everything else, can be not as good as you want it to be, you can scale to a place where you're hiring people, delegating to them, et cetera, and you can start to build that momentum. But when you're, and even when you are, delegating to people, a lot of times, especially with, I think, ADHD symptoms, I've had people say to me, yeah, I've got an EA. And I'll be like, right, what are they doing? Nothing. They're doing nothing. They're in terms of what they could be doing and what you could be delegating, they're still doing all of those things. They're still carrying everything because they just don't know how to get it out of their head.
One thing what you're saying, it personally resonates with me in terms of, how to structure your day, priorities for the day, what's urgent, what's important. It's funny, I'm pulling this up because I got this in a newsletter, literally a few days ago. It's like this matrix, what's important, high urgency versus low. So all your tasks kind of fall into one of these 4 buckets. And so my question for you is, and I know there's no one size fits all. It's very preference, but what's an easy way for people to actually log their priorities? For example, what I've been doing for the last several months, I literally have a cue card where every day I have a new cue card with the date on it, and this is what I'm doing for the day, literally one of these. So what are your tips for people on doing that?
That's a great question. Actually, if you want to DM me on Instagram at Unconventional Organization, you can just DM me deconstruction and I'll give you a custom GPT that does this process, because we give this one away. But we essentially have what we call the prioritization filter, which is kind of like the Eisenhower matrix, which is what you're looking at right there. But it's more designed for ADHD, because one of the things we don't do very well is look at things and manipulate them. Okay, well, if that's important and we're holding it all in our head, Working memory with ADHD, not great. Long-term memory, awesome. But working memory, not great. So what we want to do is we want to go through and we want to just have a space where we can dump all of the tasks that come through our day while we're between job sites, in our office, whatever we're doing, we can just dump all this stuff that we need to do. And then we need to filter it. We need to say what has to be done in the next 24 hours, or there's going to be a negative external consequence. Like, what's that truly urgent? I would do it even if I was in a waiting room and, that was my day situation. What needs to be done in the next 7 days that has that same level of urgency? And then everything else is 7 days plus. Because really, when you're thinking about your life, a lot of it is this idea of, okay, I have to do this today, I have to do this week, and then everything else I can look at like on Sunday or Friday or Monday or whenever you're like reviewing the following week. That allows you to remove, and I've had so many people say, I have 50 things to do, 100 things to do. And actually, most people have less than 5 truly urgent things. Even if you work in construction, because I have worked with people in construction, so I can tell you this is true. That then creates space, which a lot of people don't even know they have, but it does, and they do, create space for that truly urgent stuff. I need to hire. I need to build out my hiring system so it's not just me throwing something up on Craigslist and hoping for the best. Like, I need to, upgrade how I'm training people or figure out my client acquisition funnel, like that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Is that sort of like the prioritization filter that you
Yes.
give away?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And like I said, if you DM me deconstruction, then I will give the GPT to you and it walks you through all of those different steps.
Nice.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Touching on what Johnny kind of alluded to a little bit before. So, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, Skye. So I'd love to hear your perspective. There are a lot of contractors who know they need a system or process or a software to help them be more efficient. They even acknowledge and know that this system will help them save time and be better, but they just don't end up using it and continue with their old ways. Why is that? Do you have the answer for us?
I understand the problem. I have a lot of clients who do that. They'll say, I'm using this, I'm using that. And I will tell you the answer to your problem is not to go find new software. It's not. Like 9 times out of 10, that is not the answer to your problem. Because a lot of times people will just software hop. They'll be like, oh, this is great. And sometimes they'll even like really ramp it up and they'll say, I spent 10K getting this set up and, 15 doing this. And still it's not working. The reason is because it needs to be easier, basically. So a lot of the time, that's what this problem is. So I'll give you an example. If you have something that you're like, okay, if I sit down at my desk and I type it in and I click this button, then I click this thing, and as I remember all of these steps, then it's going to look really pretty and the dashboard's going to be great. You're not going to get to your desk to do this. You're not going to click all those buttons. If you have ADHD or working memory struggles, you're not going to remember that you have to click this button to this button to this button to this button. You would be way better off with a simple system that you could do on your phone or on an iPad.
Skye, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
What you're describing is literally Jobtable.
I was just about to say. I was waiting for you to finish. I was gonna say. By the way, this is no cue into Jobtable, but thank you very much because look, this was my big thing, our big thing in designing this, because we used a bunch of software, and I felt like we were software hopping, and nobody really understood what it's like to be on the go, and you need something that's quick, simple, simplicity. Simplicity, just like you said, whether you have ADHD or you don't, it doesn't matter. Simplicity fixes a lot of things in your life. And that was one of the main things. So I'm so glad you said that, and Costa queued it up. So it was just like perfect timing. So Costa, take it away.
No, so sorry to interrupt. I want you to continue. But
You're all
that
good.
was just such a
Yeah.
great
Well, look,
point.
I've been inside a lot of terrible construction software. Like, that is my job. I I am the person that people go to when they don't know how to actually use stuff. So I've seen a lot of the back end and the inside, and my team have worked on a lot of that stuff. So yeah, having something that is simple and it's not even just if you have ADHD, it's just if you have those kinds of symptoms, and likely you do if you're in business, then you're going to need something simpler. Then if you work in corporate and you love quarterly reviews, then you're probably going to be fine. But for everybody else, we need those simple systems. And it's not just simple in a way that it's not usable. It's about that flexibility. I can use it in my phone. I can use it on my iPad. I can pull it up on the computer, and I can, press a few buttons and get to where I need to be. Like that stuff, again, it's that diagnosis. So a lot of what I've done, so I'll give you an example. I have a client who is running a business in reconstruction or renovation. And basically what they're finding is that the whole system was breaking down because he was trying to use too many systems at once. He was like, this is my quote system, this is my other system, I should scan the room and I should send it to somebody and then they'll send it back to me, and da 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 da. It was like this whole convoluted, like, this would be perfect. If I did this, it would be 10 out of 10. And what was happening was that quotes were coming in, they weren't being reviewed. Eventually they would get back to them. By that time, someone else was doing the job and they were losing a lot of money. So by simply saying, okay, you need to use this on your iPad, you are not going to get to the computer. Let's make that real. Like, let's do this on your iPad. What is the simplest way to get to the best version of a quote based on those parameters? Okay, cool. Can we do that quote in the room so you don't have to leave? And again, it comes back to that transition time, right? Let's not get in our car and then be like, well, now I want to go on my phone. I want to see what's going on everywhere else. Oh, I didn't get to that quote. I'll do it when I get home, but now I have kids and da da da. Like, let's say you're going to be in the room and they're going to leave you to go take measurements and all that kind of stuff. And that's when you're going to send the quote. So by the time you're walking out the door, it's already done. So working on that system with my client is how we've been able to save expenses, improve quote times, all that kind of thing.
And when we're done this podcast, send them jobtable.com.
Yeah.
And
be like,
perfect
screw
segue.
that system. Use the other one.
I honestly, I love what I'm hearing, and
it's so true. You such good points, because I'm kind of nodding because I feel like I've kind of came to the same conclusion as to, like, back to my original question, like, why do they continue just with their old ways? And just based on my experience, give you actually a good example from like a couple weeks ago. Newer client to Jobtable. We just had a call set up, and I think when people think software, especially in construction, their mind automatically thinks like very complicated. I need hours to like figure this out, and expensive. Like, those are just the automatic thoughts that come into people's head. And it's probably just because most software out there is that very complicated and expensive and overwhelming. So this one client, we had like a 15-minute call set up, at least in my calendar, but he had allocated 2 hours to think like this was an onboarding call and like to figure it out. And like literally we were done in 10 minutes, and he was like completely taken back and blown away. He's like, holy crap. Like I thought I was going to sit here for like 2 hours and like kind of learn this stuff. This is like so simple that it took 10 minutes.
Yeah,
So,
and getting back to that, like, one thing I noticed too in building out a system like this, and the reality is we built it internally for us, like, to use for our company, and then we accidentally stumbled upon a new business. Let's just say that much. But getting back to the focus and on how many hats they have to wear, and how you have the messy desk, they don't even know where to start. Like, our main goal was also, because quotes is one huge factor, but another one is invoicing. And look, invoicing requires a lot of numbers. So the way we decided to set up the system was, once you set up your quote, right, you know what you have to invoice them if it's approved. Now, I always come back to, even myself, when I was on a beach in Europe back in July, and I'm with my family, and I'm getting a message from one of my guys saying I'm done this certain section without a calculator, without being behind a desk, without worrying about, okay, I need this amount of time. You just pull out the phone, you go to what you want to invoice, you select the percentage, it does all the math for you, proceed, there's your PDF, send to the client. Within, a minute and a half, it's done, right? And this is the big thing that I find that, getting back to that one client that you had, they want to use so many tools to a point that it becomes so overcomplicated that, again, if people do have those symptoms like you're talking about, all you're doing is, like, you think you're helping yourself, but you're actually, I think the terminology you use is bleeding, right? Like, you're literally wasting more time than you think that you're actually saving. Sure, it might be a cool tool, right? Like you said, I want to scan this room, and then I want to send it to this person and send it to this person. But think about, getting back to the memory. Think about how much you have to remember after, right? Yeah. Does that really help you? And I think that's what we need in today's day and age. And again, just focusing on the construction aspect, where the guy who starts the company is one guy typically in a truck, starts to scale a business. You're wearing so many hats, from quotes to meeting clients to doing this, making sure the job's done, invoicing, watching your cash flow, blah, 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 blah. So when you start to use 10, 15 different tools and they're all very convoluted, it starts to become very overwhelming. And I think you get, terminology I like to use is, you get lost in the sauce, right? You don't even know where you're coming or where you're going, right? So yeah. I think that this episode, and people listening to this, from somebody like you, and I know you said PhD dropout, but I could definitely tell you've done a lot of research on and looked at the data behind this. I think that this is extremely important for any one of our listeners that are in construction, trying to start a business or scale a business, to listen to. And also, if you are struggling with these symptoms, Skye, at the end of it, I know Costa will say he's going to drop all your information below to reach out to you, but I'm glad that they're hearing it from somebody on the other side of the fence, right? Not just construction people trying to tell you what you should do.
For sure. I know we're running short for time, but Skye, a couple of questions. You mentioned GPT that you're going to give away, by the way, deconstruction, wherever this is clipped, and Skye will send that to you. But how do you see AI helping or the opposite when it comes to like ADHD and just priorities and improving the day-to-day?
I think it's kind of funny. I will say, I don't know if you've ever had this experience. You'll chat to AI and AI will be like, that's amazing. Let's make an entire thing. It'll totally be great. And you're like, yeah. And then you walk away and you never open that page again. So, this is how we don't want to use it because AI can sometimes be a little bit like us. With ADHD, we have divergent thinking, so we can like take something and like explode it, like, and then we could do this, and then we could make this, and da 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 da. So we do want to, again, keep it that simple scales. But in terms of then, once you have something, I've found personally people have really benefited from things like custom GBTs. So learning how to make your own GBT that says, I'm going to dump a transcript from a conversation and I want you to pull out like this, and this. This is the invoicing, this is the update, etc. Like formatting it. That stuff can be really helpful. That's very accessible for a lot of people. And then obviously just asking it questions like, what is this? How do I convert this measurement? Like all of that kind of stuff is very simple. So I would say like stay away from AI agents unless you're really enthusiastic about it. But adding those pieces, again, those simple, usable, practical pieces when necessary. And when I work with people, we diagnose like when that's necessary, can make a big difference.
Yeah, very good. And again, want to be mindful of your time, but last question we always ask every guest here. If you can put on a billboard for every construction or trade business owner in the world to see, what would the message be on that billboard?
I want to say stop scaling chaos. That would be the first one.
That's a good slogan. I like that. That's a good slogan.
Did you trademark that?
I should. I say it enough. That's probably what I would go with.
Nice. Awesome. All right, Skye, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. If anyone wanted to learn more about you, reach out. Where's the best place they could do that?
Yeah, so I have a podcast, the ADHD Skills Lab. We interview amazing people, business owners with ADHD. We go through the research. You can find us there. If you want that GBT we talked about, you can just DM deconstruction at Unconventional Organization on Instagram with an S. Or you can find us at Unconventional Organization pretty much everywhere.
Amazing. Perfect. We'll put that all below. And yeah, thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it. I think anyone listening to this is going to get a ton of value. I think it's relatable to a lot of people in construction, in the trades that are listening. So really appreciate it. And if you are a construction business owner looking to streamline your day-to-day, make your day-to-day more efficient, alleviate some headaches, check out jobtable.com. There's a 14-day free trial and get started. That's it. Skye, thank you.
Skye, thank you so much.
Nice
Nice meeting you.
All right.